November 18th, 1944, 05:15 hours, Hürtgen Forest, Germany. Through the pre-dawn darkness, Obergefreiter Klaus Zimmermann watched from his reinforced concrete bunker as American infantry began their assault on the Siegfried Line fortifications. His machine gun nest, designated Strong Point Baker 7 by German defensive plans, commanded a perfect field of fire across 50 meters of open ground. Zimmermann had survived 3 years on the Eastern Front. He had seen Soviet human wave attacks, witnessed T-34 tanks burning like torches, and watched German defensive positions hold against odds that would have broken lesser armies. This morning's American attack would be no different. His MG-42 machine gun, the weapon Allied soldiers called Hitler's buzzsaw, could fire 1,200 rounds per minute. No infantry could cross that killing zone. At 05:20, the American artillery barrage lifted. Through the smoke and cordite haze, Zimmermann saw them coming. 3rd Battalion, 22nd Infantry Regiment, 4th Infantry Division. Young men, most barely 20 years old, advancing through a forest that had already consumed 50,000 American casualties in 6 weeks of fighting. What Zimmermann didn't know, what German intelligence had completely failed to grasp, was that the Americans advancing toward his position carried a weapon that would revolutionize close-quarters combat. A grenade so perfectly designed that a single soldier could neutralize multiple fortifications with one throw. The Germans had mocked it, calling it the soup can because of its distinctive cylindrical shape and grooved surface. They were about to discover why that soup can had become the most feared handheld weapon in the American arsenal. The transformation began 3 years earlier in a Maryland research facility, April 19, 1941, Aberdeen Proving Ground. Major William Mills watched another prototype grenade fail. This was the 23rd design iteration. America's entry into the war seemed inevitable, yet the Army still relied on grenades designed during World War I that were dangerously unpredictable. The breakthrough came from a radically different approach. Instead of controlling fragmentation through casting techniques, engineers designed a grenade with a serrated external surface featuring raised squares, resembling a pineapple. The real innovation was internal. A coiled wire inside the grenade body, combined with precisely calculated explosive charges, created a fragmentation pattern that was both lethal and predictable. By September 1941, the Mark II fragmentation grenade entered production, weight 21 ounces, length 4.5 inches, casualty radius 15 meters, effective throwing range 40 meters. The fuse delay, 4 to 5 seconds, gave throwers time to take cover while denying defenders time to throw it back. The fragmentation pattern produced approximately 1,000 fragments per grenade, creating a 360-degree kill zone. Production began at the Bloomfield Ordnance Plant in November 1941. Within weeks of Pearl Harbor, American factories were producing 50,000 Mark II grenades daily. By 1943, production reached 300,000 per day. Between 1941 and 1945, American factories manufactured 70 million Mark II grenades. German intelligence completely missed the significance. When they captured their first Mark II grenades in North Africa during early 1943, Wehrmacht technical experts dismissed them as crude. What German engineers failed to grasp was that every supposed flaw was actually a carefully designed feature. June 6, 1944, 06:30 hours, Omaha Beach, Normandy, France. Private First Class John Havener of the 29th Infantry Division crouched behind a destroyed tank obstacle as German machine gun fire swept the beach. Around him, the first wave of the invasion had been decimated. Bodies floated in the surf. Burning vehicles littered the sand. The carefully planned assault had devolved into chaos. Havener carried 6 Mark II grenades on his equipment harness. He had trained with them at Camp Shelby, Mississippi, thrown hundreds during practice. But training ranges with wooden targets bore no resemblance to this nightmare of noise, smoke, and death. The German strongpoint ahead, designated Widerstandsnest 6-2 by the defenders, had stopped 3 previous assault attempts. Its interconnected bunkers and trenches commanded every approach to the seawall. At 0645, Sergeant Robert Wright rallied a squad of survivors. The plan was desperate but simple. Use smoke grenades to mask their advance, then assault the strongpoint with fragmentation grenades. Havner and 5 other soldiers low crawled through the sand as mortar rounds detonated around them. 30 meters from the first bunker, Wright gave the signal. Havner pulled the pin on his first Mark II and counted 1001, 1002, 1003. He threw. The grenade arced through the air, struck the bunker's firing slit, and bounced inside. The explosion was muffled but devastating. The German machine gun fell silent. Havner threw his second grenade at a connecting trench. Another explosion, screams, then silence. Within 5 minutes, the squad had neutralized Widerstandsnest 6-2 using 17 grenades. The Mark II's fragmentation pattern had cleared interconnected defensive positions. Each grenade produced approximately 1,000 metal fragments traveling at 1,200 meters per second. In confined spaces, these fragments ricocheted off walls and ceilings, creating a steel storm that nothing could survive. German after-action reports noted with alarm the effectiveness of American grenades. But increasing production was impossible. Germany's grenade manufacturing was scattered, quality control inconsistent, production never exceeded 1 million per month. By summer 1944, American soldiers received unlimited grenade supplies. Each infantryman carried minimum 4 grenades, often 6 or 8. The abundance was so complete that American troops used grenades casually for tasks German soldiers would never consider. Before we continue with the dramatic events in the Hurtgen Forest, I want to make sure you don't miss future stories like this. Hit that subscribe button and to turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into the untold stories of history. October 21st, 1944. The Hurtgen Forest battle was entering its bloodiest phase. The 28th Infantry Division, the Pennsylvania National Guard unit that would suffer 80% casualties in the forest, was attempting to capture the village of Germeter. Every approach was covered by German bunkers, pillboxes, and machine gun nests. The forest's dense vegetation prevented effective artillery observation. American advances measured in hundreds of meters required days of fighting. Private Robert Hansen of Company C had survived 6 weeks in the Hurtgen. His squad had been reduced from 12 men to 5. They had seen friends killed by artillery, machine guns, mortars, mines, and snipers. The forest had become a meat grinder, consuming entire battalions. Now they faced another German bunker complex, this one protecting a crucial crossroads. The bunker was a professional fortification, concrete walls 3 feet thick, interlocking fields of fire, multiple firing slits at varying heights, log and earth overhead cover that could withstand direct artillery hits. Getting close enough to assault it meant crossing 40 meters of open ground under machine gun fire. Previous attempts had failed with devastating casualties. Hansen's platoon leader, Lieutenant James Morrison, devised a desperate plan. They would saturate the bunker with smoke grenades to blind the defenders, then rush forward with fragmentation grenades. It was crude, but it was all they had. Artillery support was unavailable. Tanks couldn't navigate the forest. Infantry would have to solve this problem with the weapons they carried. At 1400 hours, 8 soldiers threw smoke grenades simultaneously. White phosphorus clouds obscured the German firing slits. Hansen and 3 others sprinted forward while their squad mates provided covering fire. They covered 30 meters before the Germans recovered and began firing blind through the smoke. Hansen felt bullets snap past his head, heard the distinctive sound of MG-42 fire 1,200 rounds per minute, creating a continuous roar. 10 meters from the bunker, Hansen dove behind a fallen log. His 3 companions were down, wounded or dead. He couldn't tell through the smoke. He was alone with 6 Mark II grenades and a target he couldn't miss. The bunker's firing slit was directly ahead approximately 8 feet above ground level and 3 feet wide. A difficult throw under any circumstances, nearly impossible under fire through smoke. Hansen pulled 2 grenades, one in each hand. He yanked both pins with his teeth, a technique instructors had warned against but desperation required. He counted 1 second, then threw both grenades in rapid succession. The first grenade struck the concrete wall beside the firing slit and bounced away. The second grenade went through the slit cleanly. The explosion was devastating. The confined space of the bunker amplified the blast pressure. The 1,000 metal fragments ricocheted off the interior walls at hypersonic speeds, turning the bunker into a killing chamber. Every German inside died instantly. But the secondary effects were even more significant. The bunker connected through underground passages to 2 adjacent positions. The blast wave channeled through these passages like water through pipes. The overpressure alone was lethal, rupturing lungs and eardrums. The fragments that entered the passages killed or wounded everyone in the connecting bunkers. Hansen's single grenade had cleared 3 separate fortifications. When American troops secured the position 15 minutes later, they counted 23 German soldiers dead, 7 wounded. The 3 bunkers that had stopped 2 days of assaults had been neutralized by one 19-year-old private with a Mark II grenade. The crossroads fell within an hour. The 28th Division's advance, stalled for 48 hours, resumed. This engagement exemplified the Mark II's effectiveness. German defensive planning assumed bunker complexes would require combined arms assaults. The idea that a single infantryman with a hand grenade could neutralize multiple fortifications was outside their conceptual framework. The psychological impact on German defenders was severe. They began to fear American grenade attacks more than artillery. The distinctive sound of a grenade spoon releasing became a sound German veterans feared above all others. November 18, 1944, 0520 hours, Hurtgen Forest. We returned to Obergefreiter Klaus Zimmermann in Strong Point Baker 7. The American artillery had lifted. His MG-42 was loaded with a fresh belt of ammunition. The field of fire was clear. He would cut down the Americans as they crossed the open ground. He had done it before. He would do it again. At 0525, the Americans appeared through the smoke. But something was wrong. They weren't advancing in the expected assault lines. Instead, small groups were moving rapidly from cover to cover, advancing in coordinated rushes that never exposed more than 3 or 4 soldiers simultaneously. Zimmermann opened fire, traversing his machine gun across the kill zone. He saw 2 Americans fall. The others disappeared into shell craters and behind trees. Then he saw something that made no sense. American soldiers were throwing grenades at his bunker from 40 meters away. Impossible. No one could throw a grenade that far accurately. He had trained with steel hand granates. Maximum effective range was 30 meters. These Americans were wasting ammunition, throwing grenades that would fall short and explode harmlessly. The first Mark II landed 3 meters in front of Zimmermann's firing slit, too far to cause damage. The explosion sent fragments pinging off the concrete. Zimmermann smiled. Foolish Americans. The second grenade struck the bunker's roof and rolled off. Another wasted throw. Then the third grenade, thrown by Corporal James Webster of Company B, sailed through the firing slit cleanly. Zimmermann had 1 second to process what was happening. The cylindrical grenade bounced off the concrete floor, rolled toward him, and exploded. The blast in the confined space was catastrophic. The overpressure ruptured both his eardrums instantly. He never heard the sound of his own death. The 1,000 fragments traveling at 1,200 meters per second tore through everyone in the bunker. Zimmermann, his loader, his ammunition bearer, the communications specialist, all died within milliseconds. But the effects extended beyond the primary bunker. Strong Point Baker 7 consisted of 3 interconnected positions with communication trenches and underground passages. Webster's grenade, detonating in the central bunker, sent blast waves and fragments through these connections. Soldiers in the adjacent positions died from overpressure or fragmentation. Within 30 seconds, 15 German soldiers were dead, 8 wounded. The entire strongpoint was neutralized by a single grenade. Company B's assault succeeded with just 3 wounded. By 0600 hours, they had penetrated half a kilometer into German defenses. The Siegfried Line had been breached by infantry armed primarily with grenades. American infantry doctrine evolved to maximize grenade effectiveness. Each rifle squad carried 48 grenades minimum. German squads carried 2 grenades per soldier. This difference stemmed from industrial capacity. German forces couldn't afford liberal grenade use. American forces used grenades for any task that might benefit from explosive force. American forces consumed grenades at extraordinary rates during sustained combat. The 30th Infantry Division reported using 12,000 grenades in a single day during Aachen. The 4th Infantry Division requisitioned 30,000 grenades weekly during Hurtgen. Supply convoys delivered grenades by the truckload. December 16, 1944. The Ardennes offensive, Hitler's last desperate gamble to split the Allied armies, exploded across the thinly held American front. German forces achieved complete tactical surprise, surrounding entire American units and threatening to destroy multiple divisions. The Battle of the Bulge would test American infantry in the most desperate fighting of the European War. At Bastogne, where the 101st Airborne Division was surrounded by overwhelming German forces, grenades became the primary defensive weapon. Artillery ammunition was rationed. Tank support was unavailable. The paratroopers held their perimeter through small unit actions where grenades proved decisive. Between December 19th and December 26th, the 101st used 78,000 grenades. German assault tactics, which relied on infiltration and close combat, played into American grenade doctrine. Paratroopers allowed German infantry to close to grenade range, then devastated them with concentrated throws. One engagement exemplified this. On December 23rd, a German company attempted to penetrate the perimeter near Foy. 40 American defenders threw over 200 grenades in 3 minutes. The German company suffered 93 casualties. The survivors retreated. American position held with 2 wounded. If you're finding this deep dive into military history fascinating, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss our next video. We've got more incredible untold stories coming your way. Hit that subscribe button now. German commanders attempting to understand attack failures cited American grenade superiority. Field Marshal Walter Model, commanding Army Group B during the Bulge, wrote in a December 29th report, American defensive tactics rely heavily on massed grenade use. Their infantry employs hand grenades in quantities and with effectiveness that our forces cannot match. This disparity in close combat capability significantly impacts assault outcomes. Model's observation was accurate. By late 1944, the German army experienced terminal logistical collapse. German divisions received approximately 15,000 grenades monthly. American divisions consumed that in 2 or 3 days. German training memorandums instructed soldiers to watch for cooking techniques and take immediate cover. But these countermeasures proved ineffective. The Mark II's 4 to 5 second fuse was perfectly calibrated. January 1945. The Battle of the Bulge ended in complete German defeat. Infantry training manuals were updated to emphasize grenade tactics even more heavily. German defensive tactics evolved in response, but adaptations came too late. February 1945. The Siegfried Line fortifications were falling rapidly. The 28th Infantry Division consumed 45,000 grenades in 1 week during Roer River operations. Production reached 450,000 Mark IIs daily. Monthly output exceeded 13 million grenades. March 7, 1945. The capture of the Ludendorff Bridge at Remagen opened a crucial Rhine crossing. Between March 7th and March 24th, American forces in the bridgehead used approximately 380,000 grenades. German counterattacks encountered defensive firepower they couldn't match. May 8, 1945. Victory in Europe Day. American infantry had fought from Normandy to Germany's heart. The Mark II grenade had been present in every engagement. Approximately 40 million Mark II grenades were used in Europe. Peak monthly usage reached 4.7 million grenades during December 1944. Estimated German casualties directly from grenades exceeded 100,000 killed, 300,000 wounded. The Mark II influenced every subsequent American grenade. Modern grenades trace their lineage to its fundamental design philosophy. The soup became the template for 75 years of grenade development worldwide. Beyond technical specifications, the Mark II embodied American industrial philosophy. Problems solved through engineering excellence, mass production, and logistical superiority. Where German doctrine emphasized tactical skill to overcome material shortages, American doctrine provided overwhelming material advantage. Veteran accounts from both sides emphasize the psychological impact. German soldiers learned to fear the distinctive sound of grenades cooking. American soldiers gained confidence from carrying unlimited ammunition for weapons they trusted completely. Today, military historians recognize the Mark II as one of World War II's most influential weapons. It represented the systematic American approach to warfare. Design weapons that work reliably, produce them abundantly, train soldiers effectively, support them with flawless logistics. The Germans who laughed at the soup can weren't laughing by late 1944. They were dying in positions cleared by weapons they had underestimated. Their mockery was based on assuming crude appearance meant inferior capability. They learned too late that American engineering valued function over form. The single grenade that cleared 3 bunkers in Hurtgen wasn't an anomaly. It was the Mark II functioning exactly as designed. When soldiers threw these weapons in combat, they performed as promised. This reliability provided psychological advantages as important as material ones. The story of the Mark II is ultimately about transformation. It transformed close quarters combat, it transformed American tactical doctrine, it transformed industrial production. Most significantly, it proved that industrial capacity and engineering excellence could overcome tactical skill and battlefield courage. Obergefreiter Klaus Zimmermann never understood what killed him. He saw a cylindrical object fly through his firing slit. He had 1 second to recognize it, then nothing. His death was caused by a weapon designed with such precision that every aspect had been predetermined years before in a Maryland testing ground. Zimmerman and millions like him died facing weapons they couldn't match, and industrial capacity they couldn't comprehend. Their mockery of American soup cans was based on fundamental misunderstanding of how democratic societies wage war. Not through individual heroics or tactical genius, but through systematic application of industrial power, engineering excellence, and logistical superiority. The lesson resonates through subsequent conflicts. American forces have consistently enjoyed material advantages that made tactical challenges manageable. The Mark II grenade represents the beginning of this approach, not seeking fair fights, but creating such overwhelming advantage that outcomes become predetermined. From Normandy to Germany's ruins, the Mark II proved itself in every environment. The 70 million grenades produced represented not just weapons, but manifestations of American industrial democracy at its most powerful. Each grenade was a statement that free societies could produce unlimited quantities of excellent weapons. The soldiers who carried these grenades understood this implicitly. They knew that somewhere in America, workers they would never meet had manufactured these weapons to standards they could depend on. That contract between civilian workers and combat soldiers proved stronger than any totalitarian command economy could match. Today, veterans in their 90s still remember the Mark II with respect. It was the weapon that saved their lives countless times. That gave them confidence to close with enemies who otherwise held every advantage. The soup can was the finest grenade ever made because it worked perfectly every single time. The Germans who mocked that soup can paid with their lives for underestimating American industrial capability. Their laughter died in bunkers across Europe, silenced by weapons cruder than they expected, but infinitely more effective than they imagined. In the end, That was the story of the entire war. Not dramatic wonder weapons or brilliant tactics, but mundane superiority in countless small ways that accumulated into overwhelming advantage. The Mark II grenade represented this philosophy perfectly. It didn't win the war alone, but it helped clear the path to victory, one bunker at a time, with engineering excellence and industrial abundance that totalitarian Germany could never match. They mocked the soup can grenade until it cleared 3 bunkers with one throw. Then they stopped mocking. Then they started dying. And then they lost the war to an enemy whose strength lay not in individual weapons, but in the industrial system that produced millions of those weapons with quality that never failed. The lesson remains relevant today. Underestimate democratic industrial capability at your peril. The soup cans are always more dangerous than they look.